This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast, with Joel Lindstrom, George Zabinski, and Shawn Tabor. This week, we are joined again by Lucas Alexander, and this episode is sponsored by Ingenius. Ingenius Connector Enterprise integrates your telephone system into Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM for increased phone agent productivity. Features like screen pop, click to dial, and call logging enable efficient customer service and a comprehensive view of caller interactions. We thank Ingenius for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast.
I suppose the one thing that's going to be interesting to see the migration from your solutions, typical Dynamics 365 solutions, to the world of model-driven apps. We actually do have a small challenge for people. Take your solution, right, whatever you have, and in Dynamics world, and try to create a CDS-based solution out of it. Not all of it possible, but some will go across quite nicely. Why would you want to do that? One word: licensing. Because if you are CDS-based, you own P2 license, right? And if you avoid using the damned entities, as I call them, the list of, restricted, not damned.
Basically the service objects.
Yeah. If you avoid using those and things like that, so you can sneak in under P2 license, which is significantly cheaper, about 30% or something like this, cheaper than cheapest Dynamics 365 license, non-plan license. So that's kind of interesting.
So wait, George, challenge. So if you have a CDS environment and you have a solution that doesn't include the restricted service entities, can't you import it in? Is there something you have to do to change it to work with the CDS environment?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
And that's one of the.
So what do you have to do?
Unfortunately, I can't tell. I can't tell it. It's a challenge.
Masterclass.
Yes, it is one of the challenges of the masterclass. You have to be here. I don't know when this podcast goes live, but I suppose we still would have Amsterdam and London on schedule. So
George is turning into that guy on the YouTube infomercial that says, you have this problem that is giving you back pain, and I know the solution. And he talks for half an hour about how his solution is great, but doesn't tell you what it is. Come to my class or send me some money. I'll tell you what it is. So
am I the guy that in the video that grabs the lower part of his back and just says, there's got to be a better way?
That's right. So, but yeah, we still have it as a masterclass, as part of the masterclass, and crmtipoftheday.com/masterclass if you have a chance to grab in it. But we're hoping to turn this masterclass into actually a bigger thing than it is now. So maybe
cool.
annual thing, maybe visit some US cities as well. Because the idea is, unlike all the other prescribed sort of training, we going down the path of talking about things, discussing subjects, and giving developers challenges. They're solvable challenges, like within the framework of the class, but we don't give the prescribed solutions. So on this one, there are certain things you can do, certain things to watch out for, but it's more about discussion. How do you, like, for example, if you are using one or two restricted entity, do you really need them? Can you actually get rid of them and scale down your application? It teaches you to be more compact, more dynamic in a sense.
Well, with the restricted entities, as long as you don't need to edit them and you're only reading them, then you still are okay with a P2 license. As long as it's only I believe so. As long as you're only reading.
Okay, since we're into licensing, so what's your take on the differences between P2 license and team license?
Right now, license. Team for most, in air quotes, CRM users is probably a better deal.
Mm-hmm.
Where P2 becomes attractive if they need to create some of the things that are read-only in team member licenses like opportunities.
No, but what I'm saying, team license is cheaper and gives you more. Why wouldn't you use it?
Well, what I would probably assume is that team license will only give you more for a certain amount of time, and then soon it won't give you more.
Yeah, because I mean, the not so secret is that team members are not actually restricted from doing anything in the application. It's just a license. Where indicators are, and again, I haven't heard this from Microsoft, but I would bet you that they're going to put some license validation into the actual into the application. Especially, when you go to Unified Client, which model-driven apps are Unified Client apps. That gives you a little bit more leeway to do that, I think.
Right. So I would say that it's a limited amount of time that you have left on that team member being more than a P2 license.
I wonder how many. Do we know any precedents in Microsoft licensing story where there was a certain license X that technically wouldn't allow you to do Y, but everyone was abusing it, and then suddenly one day Microsoft said enough is enough and switched on the some guarding mechanism to ensure that you can only do Y. Do we know any precedents of that besides?
Wouldn't that be Windows?
Yeah, I suppose they expire in the keys when you start abusing the key.
Yep.
Someone once selling on Amazon like Office key that turns out to be MSDN key, and people were literally buying. And Amazon had it as a recommended product. One of those. Amazon recommends, and there was a stolen MSDN key that been sold and sold many times, and then it just stopped working one day. So I suppose there are some precedents, and I'm saying for people who do abuse team licenses, watch out because better things are coming.
Probably. Start planning on that likely. Going away.
Well, I think that some of the things like the field service licenses and universal scheduling, is where there's been a tie between licensing and functionality. I mean, you have to have a security role, but I think with some of these solutions coming out that don't work unless you have the license, that's kind of been the first step. Where before that, it seemed like licensing was just a license, and you could give people whatever security role they wanted.
Right.
So, speaking of GDPR, I just got email from one of the vendors, and Dynamics vendors, and it says GDPR, don't let it tear us apart. Is that the general feeling in Europe, that it's tearing people apart?
I think that they're trying to make sure that they still keep your data. They're worried that you're, like you were saying, you're unsubscribing from a lot of groups.
Lucas, where are you based?
I'm in Alabama. We're almost like a whole separate country, it feels like. Sometimes.
Okay, that's
very close. Very close.
Interesting. Yeah, I just wonder how does it feel to be. Well, I guess I'll report from the field in the upcoming weeks because I'm in Europe for a few days and a couple of weeks. Running the Masterclass, and in case if you didn't register yet, crm20day.com/Masterclass.
So I've been
traveling
the last couple weeks. I've been traveling the last couple weeks. I went to the Twin Cities. I went to Boston. And I've been telling the CDS story and the Power Apps story. But the thing that got more excitement from users was the category and delegate tracking functionality.
Really?
Really, yeah. Because
wow.
I mean, these are companies that, like financial services companies, that have painfully needed this. So if you don't know, read the tip of the day from 1017, or 1117, the one I just published yesterday.
So a link will be in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put a link in it. But here's where basically now you can enable an DB org setting that will give you a track to Dynamics category, and then you or someone who manages your calendar for you can set appointments and emails to be tracked by category. So it's pretty cool. There's one nice surprise benefit of this is if you enable this feature, you now can easily tell which activities have been tracked because it will set that category for tracked items.
So what's your take on it being released for 8.2 and not 9?
I think they looked at where the biggest group of users were that had the pain, and getting it out for 8.2 was the priority for that.
Someone with $1 million account waltzed in and said, "Okay, we have that, or we're walking out."
Well, yeah, I mean, they were. I can't say they've lost deals from it, but it's been a major disappointment, I'll put it that way, to customers who need it, because what you don't realize, and if you read tip of the day, is the documentation as of like 6 months ago said you could do delegate tracking, because with the client side sync you could, but it was never updated. And Microsoft develops general platforms, and generally the way it works is good for most people, because you can the default behavior, because most people don't have an assistant that manages their calendar, but for the subset that do, it's very important.
Yeah, this is very, very big in financial services. Very, very big.
This also opens the door to tracking from non-Outlook mail apps, because other than folder level tracking, there's no way to track if you're not using some flavor of Outlook, be it Outlook Web Access, Outlook on the computer, Outlook on your phone. And so now if you have a third-party mail app that supports categories, Apple Mail does not, but I know some of the others do, you can track stuff now. So that's making the system more accessible. You'll get more stuff tracked if that's important to you. And that's...
it's probably worth considering. So, Lucas, what about you and your customers?
I haven't had anybody ask me for this. So it sounds cool, though. I mean, I'm actually just, as soon as Joel said it, I went to tip of the day and I looked at the tip and I said, and the wheels are turning. But typically, the work I've been doing, I have not had anyone clamoring for this. But I will file it away in the old mental filing cabinet and see.
How big is your mental filing cabinet?
For stuff that interests me, it's pretty big. For stuff that doesn't, I don't have a lot of room.
It's more of a trunk than a closet.
Yeah.
With
it's not terribly organized. There's stuff everywhere. This is one of those things that I think it goes on my to-do list, right? And I was telling somebody the other day, every day it seems like my to-do list in Dynamics 365 and Azure gets bigger, because I can't keep up with all the stuff I need to try.
This is one of those things that's worth calling up customers that you've had in the past, just to let them know, because it's one of those things that people were disappointed when they learned it, and they found ways to somewhat deal with it in a way that halfway works. But it's worth revisiting and just letting people know that, hey, it's out there, because I've been surprised that... See, I always thought financial services, but when I talked to one of my manufacturing customers about it, they have some cases where this would be helpful for them. So it's one of those things that isn't, other than me, it seems, isn't high on anybody's favorite new features list, but it's something that's really valuable when you need it. So I'd recommend you call some of the people that you've implemented in the past, or people that activity tracking is really important to, and you may find some clever uses of the category tracking beyond the delegate scenario.
Right. Yeah, it's anywhere. It's really going to be popular anywhere there's a really strong assistant to executive level, say, where there's that delegation of duties, especially with calendaring. It'll be important to those customers.
Right.
But Mr. Joel, we have a couple other items that I wanted to touch on before we wrap this. Fun new feature for Flow. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Microsoft is now bringing Flow to Excel, which is interesting. It's going to be an add-in for the Office Store initially, but it's going to make it part and parcel of the product. So you're starting to see within the entire ecosystem, you're starting to see Flow proliferate throughout all of the applications, which is great because that gives you more connectivity between those applications. But
this reminds me of a conversation, and Shawn, you may have been with me at MVP Summit where I was at breakfast, and I was talking to one of the long time Excel MVPs, and he was somewhat downhearted because Microsoft has been discouraging or hiding or de-emphasizing macros and VB script.
Right.
Which, people who use Excel a long time, they would do all kinds of crazy things with it. And it seems like JavaScript and Flow are the kind of the next generation for macros and VB script. And he had some compelling arguments about why it doesn't cut it, especially for manufacturing customers. But I think this is the answer, where macros and VB script had a lot of security concerns and got Microsoft Office documents banned in some places. So it makes sense that, but this does and Flow could be used with Excel already, but it's more through OneDrive and SharePoint. It's not actually putting in there. And so where this is relevant to us is, I remember there was an Excel add-in called Ebex maybe 7-8 years ago. They may still exist, but basically would let you enter and update data inside of a spreadsheet and send it to Dynamics, kind of the import wizard without the import wizard. And I'm thinking scenarios such as, you go to a trade show and get a list of people from business cards or something. There's some cases where quick data entry through Excel is nice, and so having Flow more integrated with Excel could be useful to at least a subset of Dynamics users.
Well, I'm just hoping to see more scenarios for that connectivity and more capabilities within the different Office apps, because I think the more flexibility we have with the flows that are available outside of the standard templated, if you have a file in this folder, do this kind of thing, more data resident or dependent flows, that would be really cool to see.
And more opportunities for somebody sorting a spreadsheet incorrectly to screw up their Dynamics data, too.
Right.
But, it's funny, Joel, talking about data entry in Excel as opposed to, through the regular Dynamics UI. I think about my first ever, Microsoft CRM 3.0 implementation. I had users who, they kind of lived and died by Excel. And I came up with this sort of complicated process and said, enter your data in Excel, save it to a CSV, and you're going to use this other tool to then import it into CRM, and everything will be there. And they thought that was awesome. So when I think about features users clamor for, certainly folks I've worked with in the past, if I said you don't have to go over here, right? You can do it all in Excel. That would be really powerful. And I think it touches on George and Shawn, the discussion y'all were having a few minutes ago about how people interact with the ecosystem and where they are. We don't really care about the UI so much for some of these users, just as long as they can get the data in. So,
Is something interesting for you, Lucas, because I'll reserve my judgment on calling Flow from Excel for a second, but what is also coming to Excel, and to me it's much more interesting than ability to invoke Flow from Excel, is ability to declare functions in Excel that are callable, that are actually in fact Azure functions. So you create your function, Azure function, as you would, and then it's a really short road to make this function a native function in Excel.
Now that is interesting.
That is interesting. That you can file in your better organized developer cabinet.
Right. So let me tell you basically what the old, and not elderly, but basically the longtime Excel MVP who is by trade an engineer in a manufacturing world. His complaint about the move to Azure Functions and JavaScript is he said that the typical engineer could write VB script and could do it without needing tools like Visual Studio and basically run a whole manufacturing plant. And it's very common in those industries. Whereas moving to these new languages, it makes it more of a developer thing.
Yes, I agree. But at the same time, well, I generally, I already mentioned it a couple times. Generally speaking, all you need to do is to search internet for the Excel disasters. And you will find examples where literally the whole country's futures were changed because of some stuff ups in Excel. So Excel is evil when it comes to data analysis because all calculations are hidden. They're not visible. That's in a nutshell. You can search for disasters and search for Excel and Greece and things like that, and you will find some interesting samples. But what is interesting to me when you're talking about the flow, suddenly I realized that, remember that I had my beef with the Power Apps and saying, we will have this proliferation of, Microsoft Access style Power Apps here and there created by citizen developers. And then I realized that I'm barking at the wrong tree, so to speak, because that's not where the danger is going to come from. Power Apps are complicated enough to kind of raise the bar and not jaw the user to muck around with it too much. Flow is the evil and the backdoor where all the scattered functionality, enterprise functionality is going to end up living in. So when Joe leaves the company and suddenly business processes break because someone disabled Joe account and there have been 72 flows attached to his account, that's where things are going to go pear-shaped.
So George says that Excel is evil and Flow is evil. So you put them together, does it become eviler?
Are you saying they cancel each other out? No, but not so much evil as I'm saying, look, I changed my tune when it comes to citizen developers, right? So I'm embracing them now, but I'm embracing them as my children, not as, evil counterparts. So I'm
embracing them with the kind of cold side hug.
Yes. Yes, I'm there. It's okay. We've all been there. We've all been children before. Yeah.
Your ignorance is understandable but not forgivable. That kind of thing.
Yeah. But now look after them. So what I'm saying, if you are DevOps, if you're developer, if you're running in the enterprise, if you're planning something, watch out for those unruly flows out of control. Becoming part of your business system, becoming part of your ecosystem, and you have no visibility and no control what those things do. So just make sure that you keep an eye on users and how they do things. Talk to your users, as strange as it may sound. Figure out if they did create flows that are useful. Take it away from them, saying it's not a toy. Turn them into logic apps, make them part of your DevOps process and, part of the deployment and so on. Just watch out because that's where the unruly teenagers are going to ramp up and, create all the havoc with Excel and Flow.
I think you're spot on. I think that's the one. I don't necessarily care about Flow that it's not a part of like a Dynamics 365 solution. I mean, we deploy things as part of an overall, I'm doing air quotes around solution, that aren't part of like the solutions. But what I wish there were some sort of management tools where like you could do an audit and say, these are the flows, I know how they're being used, and sort of proactively, because I think you're going to run into a situation with flows just like you have, or historically have been able to have when people share views. Right, so I've got this view, I share it with somebody, I leave, what happens, right? I think with flows, I can move in between environments, that's great. So that was my initial objection to flows. Now I just would like to be able to know who's using them and if there were a way, or which ones are out there. And I wish there were some sort of way that I could have like system flows more easily than saying, okay, I'm going to export this flow from you, and then I'm going to try to import it under some sort of system user account. So I think just a little bit. I mean, I'm coming around on flow myself, but it's that lack of governance, I think, that concerns me.
It will come. It will come. Look, one thing at a time. If you find yourself that you're crossing this boundary from flow into non-governed, uncontrollable world, my only recommendation for now would be take those flows away from the user, convert them into logic apps, and have full control what they do. But you're right. Just by looking at flow, you can't really tell how many systems it connects to, and what does it do, what the impact is. But that's true with any kind of any piece of functionality, I suppose. When you're looking at Excel spreadsheet, same problem. You see the surface, you don't know what's going on under the hood. So that's kind of inherent problem of any subsystem developed by the business users. They develop it, on the spot, and they develop it with specific business requirements in mind, and sometimes documentation surrounding that and the governance is lacking. So I'm just saying that unlike Excel, there is a better way to do things. You migrate from flow to logic apps. So that's kind of, to me, that's very empowering, and that's kind of creates peace of mind for all the enterprise people I talk to who say, hey, look, if we need to rein those users in, we can. So that's my take on it. But yeah, just watch out for those flow themes.
Watch out for them. So before we go, Shawn, what are you doing this summer?
Well, nice segue, Joel. Very nice. So what's happening this summer is much like George has his bad masterclass. We are, Sarah Critchley and I are working to create a service-based, so customer service, field service, project service-based summer camp, which is virtual. It's in conjunction with D365UG, CRM UG, and it's going to be over 3 days, August 5th through 7th, and it's going to be sessions completely integrated around the service pillars and, of course, Power Apps and Flow. So we're currently in a call for proposals. We'll have a link on the show notes. But so if you're interested in participating in a virtual summit, actually, no, it's not a summit. I can't call it a summit because we have enough summits. A virtual conference in this summer camp. Please submit a session idea. We'd love to have you. And it's going to be global in nature. So the time frames that we're going to start and end will be conducive across the globe. And we're going to have some capability for replay of sessions. So if you can't make a session early in the day, maybe you can catch it at the end. But I'm really excited about this, and Sarah and I have been working since MVP Summit on the idea and the concept, and working with CRM-UG and D365UG to get it off the ground. So
could people in the other hemisphere where it's winter, can they come too?
Absolutely. I would actually encourage many of them to do so. George, if you wanted to do a mini teaser for your masterclass where it's related to the service pillars, I'd be more than happy to have you.
We do have service pillar related giveaway for the attendees, a little surprise actually for them. And I'll tell you when it's all wrapped up, I'll tell you the horror stories involving FedEx and DHL and me begging and me trying to find a courier service that can deliver things at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and I need them by noon on Monday, so 4 p.m. in the afternoon on Friday. I'll tell you all the horror stories later, because telling them now will reveal too many details of what's coming. So
very good. But yeah, if anybody's interested in participating, we have the call for proposals out right now.
Hold on. So wouldn't you call it like? Do you have Do we have an English word for winter camp, like a winted?
Well,
Like summit and winted?
it's a virtual summer camp. So that by that very designation, it's virtually summer everywhere.
Well
It
played.
does not. Yeah,
That's nice.
that's how we get around it. Yeah,
Okay.
because you don't have winter camp.
Yes, you do.
That's
Skiing camps.
in Siberia. That's called a gulag.
I thought Colorado would be the place to be in winter, and it's very
Oh yes,
expensive.
that's a ski camp. That's very frou-frou. So we're more
Frou-frou.
aligned with the common man.
You
Yeah.
know,
Click on the link in the show notes for call for proposals. We're taking those for another couple weeks, and we're really excited about
no, it's
getting this put
really
together.
great. Yeah. So, are you letting developers in?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not as long as it's service related. That's my big thing. As long as it has something to do with customer service, field service, project service. So if you wanted to do a session on Logic apps, if you wanted to do a session on how to optimize your plugins, if you wanted to do, as long as it's service related in your scenario, we're open to it. Yeah,
Sweet.
we're absolutely.
Cool. At your
I'm going to do
service.
one
is that
about the
it?
2011 service calendar.
No. Oh, and just so I can keep saying this and putting this out there, Joel's going to do a voice of the customer session. So that's going to be great.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Send us your feedback at voice@crm.audio. Check out our other shows at crm.audio or subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and any place else podcasts are offered. This podcast is a production of Dynamics Podcast LLC.